Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 3 for 1 Sky Fantasy podcast from Fantasy Football Hub as we look ahead to Game Week 31. As usual, Paul is here. You good, Paul?
I'm good, thank you.
Good stuff. And as you can see, we have a special guest with us this evening, none other than the brilliant James from Planet FPL. Great to have you with us, James. Long time coming. How are you? And how is your season
about
going?
time, mate.
I know. It has been. I know. Sorry, mate. Sorry. How are you, mate? And how's your season going?
Yeah, thanks very much for the invite. Sky Fantasy football season's not going too badly at all. All right, better than last year, as you guys both told me in May that it would hopefully be better. My wife, by the way, has got a specific question for Paul. She wants to know if you're single, mate.
That's absolutely
I am
brilliant.
not. I recently engaged as well.
She said, and I will quote this. She said, "You ain't winning that £50,000. So might as well speak to him."
I thought you meant because he's good looking. I was going to say, how come she didn't ask me, mate? How come she
I mean, clearly, look at me. Standards aren't the highest, are they? So,
James, it's funny because my other half's got a bone to pick with you.
Oh, God.
And your Matty Cash. So her favourite band's the 1975, and the lead singer's Matty Healy. And I know that you've got a problem with grown men being called Matty. Is that right?
Well, I don't think he's earned the right to be called Matty anymore.
Brilliant. Superb. We've only got 26 minutes to kick off, gents. So I suggest... Oh, James, actually, no. Apologies, James, first. I wanted to hear about your season. What is going on? What is... I saw you had a massive leap on the weekend. What's gone well for you this year? Because you seem to be having a stormer.
It's going to right, 244th tonight. That's going to drop back certainly for me after tonight. It's just a case of limiting the damage and how bad it's going to be, I think. So, yeah, it's gone quite well. Kind of peaked about 2 or 3 weeks ago, just inside the top 200, dipped back down to 450th or so. Little ones with the captaincy recently, like Hwang and not having Bowen last week, kind of put the nail in the coffin to make me go, it's not going to be first this year, but yeah, in a strong position, I think, to hopefully kick on and finish in the top 100. I would hope to do so from here.
You've had, we're kind of watching you. I'm in a league with you, and obviously we've got the on FF staff, the Sky Content Creators League, and just kind of always have a look at where we all are in relation, with each other, because
it's a good guide.
It's fantastic, and and we're also quite open with our teams and transfers left and stuff as well. So I think kind of tracking against yourself and a few others as well. It's really, really useful to kind of see. That's how I knew you had a stormer this weekend, because I jumped above you for the first time all season, I think, and then you jumped back above me. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Paul, how was your weekend?
It wasn't too bad, although I feel like all I've done is stem the flow. So I made a couple of decent moves. I brought in Romero on Saturday, so 14-pointer straight off the bat. That was part of a longer term move because I want to start moving some of my defenders off. So it was changing formation to allow me to come off the Brighton defenders next week, so I can get back to Palmer. But it seems like most transfers that were used at the weekend kind of paid off. Maybe less so on the Bournemouth players yesterday, but I'm happy to have Solanke in there for next weekend anyway.
Yeah, I was saying to James just before we came on, is I made a kind of an accidental transfer on the weekend. Not accidental in the way you think, but I was kind of all set with my plan, and then I saw that Gross was benched, and I was out with my kids, and it's like when you're kind of out with kids, you haven't got much to you can't just say, right, stay quiet for 10 minutes. I need to concentrate. I had them kind of all around me, and I was on my phone. I was trying to look at the best route, because obviously there was Palmer, potentially Son, and there was the Bournemouth players, and I knew we had the Arsenal game tonight, and I knew that I wanted players next week, and trying to figure out money wise as well. I knew I wanted to go Edison to Neto next week, so I was trying to work out all the money, not to leave myself short, and I ended up doing Hwang. Even though Gross was benched, I did Hwang for Son on the weekend, which obviously worked out okay in the short term, but it has kind of snookered me a touch, maybe, because my plan was Hwang to Saka, and then potentially on to Son next week. So I'm a little bit snookered. So I'm thinking of taking out Haaland this evening. We've only got 23 minutes to make our transfers. So let's just have a look actually at the kind of lay of the land for the next 5 or 6 days, really, because obviously the massive talking point, nearly every question we've had in this afternoon was all around Arsenal players. How many Arsenal? Who are the best Arsenal? Tactically, how many do you go for? Because obviously they don't play then. They play Man City a week Sunday after. This is after the international break. And then they're home to Luton the following Wednesday again, which is kind of after a raft of teams play on Tuesday the 2nd. So on and off Arsenal seems to be, I think the people who are in the best spot are probably the ones who already got, for example, Saka and Saliba. I personally expect Saka to be the highest captained player this evening. Looking at it potentially on Saturday as well. By the look of it, I think maybe Solanke actually home to Sheffield United. But yeah, James, can we hear a few first on your kind of immediate thoughts on all things Arsenal?
Oh, do I have to?
Please.
I hate them.
How many times have you been asked that throughout your life?
I hope this is a soundbite that comes back to haunt me, but it feels impossible to think that they won't win and win very comfortably tonight. So it is just a case of how many, isn't it? I've decided to go very conservative and low on it, as I kind of said. I know I'm going to drop back tonight. I think it's more the point that if the Chelsea game had gone on FA Cup quarter-final weekend, I think this would have been an absolute steaming. But I think it's a case of going in and then probably selling again after Brentford on Saturday, which plenty of people are welcome to do that. But I think that I've decided not to go for Gabriel, for example, to add to Saliba. I've just added Saka tonight for the captaincy. And to be honest, Fergie, I think I'll probably captain Saka on Saturday as well, actually, against Brentford. So that therefore feels worth it. With Gabriel, just for the 2 games, my take on it probably was, as it's in and then out straight away. What do I need from him to make it worthwhile? And we can all sit here now and go, well, it's 10 points tonight at a minimum, and it's another 10 points minimum on Saturday, but it probably won't be. Now, he could obviously score tonight, and it's a massive haul, but with no captaincy as well, the fact that it's straight in and off 2 for 0 for a defender, I'm going to let it go, I think. And I know I'm going to face pain with that, but that's what I've decided to do.
Yeah, really interesting. I completely agree. Like, I've got no Arsenal, and at the moment, I'm thinking of bringing 2 in, but I know I'll be taking at least 1 back out. And so, essentially I'm using 3 or 4 transfers, kind of, what's that? Not far off 10% of my annual Sky allowance on 2 games. It just doesn't feel right. But the fixtures and Arsenal's form and Sheffield United's form and Brentford's form are just insane. And it's got the kind of vibes that, if you had like 30 plus transfers left, you could definitely just pile in, pile out, and probably get 120, 130 points.
The thing is, I mean, look, there'll be someone listening or watching now who's gone like Gabriel, Saka, Saliba, Rice, White, Odegaard. Maybe they've got Raya, who Raya's not a get because he's ineligible, isn't he, for this coming Saturday against Brentford. But there'll be some who are going, I'm going 5 or 6, and that's great. But also, when you land on Sunday, you're going to go, oh my God, there's 4 fixtures for Tottenham before Arsenal play Luton, and the one Arsenal game's Man City. And then what you do, thumping them all out again, for example.
Is it?
So you've got it's a balance. It's like those 2 Arsenal I'm going in tonight with Saliba and Saka, they might both go for me on Sunday/Monday.
What's your thoughts, Paul? You've got Saliba from memory?
And Saka as well. I moved KDB to Saka last weekend.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, you did, didn't you? Yeah. What's your thoughts?
So, yeah, pretty similar to James. I don't see the appeal in steaming into them anymore, especially in the position that I'm in. I'd rather just save the transfers and use elsewhere. I've already earmarked kind of 2 or 3 moves I want to make over the next couple of weeks, and I'd be pretty happy with my team at that point. I'm okay with dropping rank tonight. I don't know that's going to happen. Yeah. Like, if you've not got an effective ownership of more than 2, then you're most likely going to drop rank. But I'm okay with it. Play the long game from here.
Did you have a look at the effective ownership, Paul, of kind of our Arsenal defence and midfield and stuff?
No,
don't want to, Fergie. If we're going light, don't want to.
It's a strange one because everyone I speak to doesn't have Arsenal in place already, then when you look at the ownership of Saka and Saliba already, it's like pretty high in the top 1K.
Gabriel's like 5% in the top 1,000 or so going into tonight, isn't he? And I imagine so many are going to go and buy him.
Well, like Saka's 49% and Saliba's 76% already. But as I say, like most people I speak to who are all engaged managers don't own either of them, or at least don't own one of them. So yeah, that effective ownership I'll be well over 200%, I'd expect after tonight. I'm pretty happy to suck up any rank drops.
So
I think the other thing as well is if people went really heavy City, that might be influencing the amount of transfers now. So those who might be sitting there with like your Diaz's, your Akis are probably moving that sort of thing on. Obviously, Rodri, Foden, Haaland are a little bit more difficult to perhaps move on, but there's a case to move all of that on. But again, with say particularly Haaland and Rodri, you know you're going back. So it's easy. It's not a case of I don't want to move to two different Arsenal players. It's a case of, well, it's going to be two transfers over this period, or chain it on. What's the impact? Should I just leave that there, for example? Like your dilemma, Fergie, of moving Haaland on. I get it completely. And there's an obvious entry, couple of obvious entry routes back, either when they play each other after the international break, or you've got City. Is it Villa at home they've got on the Wednesday night, April the 3rd? So you're easy to go back, but is it worth making 5 now? 5 again on Sunday. Don't forget about Cole Palmer Monday if you haven't got. And yeah,
we're just talking about Arsenal here as well, though. Dunk, Van Heck, and Gross's ownership's 140% collectively between the three of them. And if you look at Brighton have the blank after Sunday, and then their fixtures after the international break are pretty horrific as well. So you can imagine people wanting to come off the Brighton players next week as well. So yeah, it definitely feels like moving season in terms of transfers getting used.
Yeah, we had a question off Ian Parron. He said, "Is this month of March going to be the month where the most amount of transfers ever used in Sky Fantasy?" And it does Ian, kind of feel like it.
He's asking questions he knows the answer to, isn't he?
I know he is, because he's going to be using a lot of them. I think he's got them all stored up, haven't he? But yeah, just looking at this planner, obviously on FF stuff, that little period where Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool in particular have got this blank, haven't they, between sort of Saturday the 9th and then like Sunday the 31st, and teams play 3-4 times in that period. Like I say, we're going to want Palmer back. We're going to want to get rid of Brighton. We'll talk a bit later on just around kind of like, broader transfer strategy. But I've just got 2 questions specifically on Arsenal just before we move on. Paul, can I ask you first, what's your 3-2-1 in terms of importance of Arsenal players to get in this evening?
I'd have Saka, Saliba, Gabriel, probably in that order.
Okay, and yourself, James?
Yeah, exactly the same as that.
And if
I think Rice, if you know you want to keep really long term, it's probably next in line.
Yeah. And secondly, in terms of kind of transfers remaining, because I think this is the point. I think, like, again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I'm certainly starting to think now, not with every transfer I make, but with a couple of transfers I make. Like Saliba is a really good example of, I know, because there's no real great defensive options in the game this season, or there has been a couple, but there's no massive standouts. If I bring Saliba in, for example, because the transfer count now is starting to dwindle a touch, it's starting to think about endgame, because there are so many other opportunities in the midfield and forward line that you're going to want to kind of switch players around with. That if we say the engaged community has an average, let's just, I know it'll be a range, but roughly 20 transfers left 2021 seems to be what people are talking about. How many transfers do you think is a sensible amount to use this evening if you've got maybe one or no Arsenal players, knowing what is coming up for what we've just been talking about? James, can I ask you that one first?
It depends what you're selling as well, doesn't it? Like I said, if you've got a real heavy Manchester City load, say you're sitting there with 5 or 6 right now, then there's a case to be saying more than what we're saying right now. So I think it very much depends on what you've got in your squad. Paul's used the analogy of Brighton. I'm down to just Gross now, and I'm thinking Gross to Palmer next Monday. So it depends, I think, very much what you're selling rather than necessarily what you're buying is part of that as well. Because if you're sitting there, if you've gambled on Son, you've had Romero for a while, these guys obviously aren't going anywhere. If you had Bowen from the other Monday night, he's not going anywhere. Watkins is not going anywhere. So it's part dependent on what you've got, I think, isn't it?
That's a good point. Yeah, I've got a a slide now and who to take out. Not a very adventurous headline, but they're kind of players that we've been asked about. Van Dijk, Gross, Foden potentially, Haaland, Tony as well. Paul, what's your kind of thoughts on that question? And is funny, it's a real dilemma, this, because there's a potential to use 4, 5, 6 transfers in this next week, but everyone will be taking out players which are potentially season keepers. Paul Jones asked about, is it worth taking out Van Dijk because he's such a fabulous option and we know we're going to want him back later on, for example.
Well, and if you look at the short-term fixtures, like this group of, say, 4 game weeks where some team, and if you're playing the extra hop-on games, sometimes you'll end up with 4-for-2s or whatever in this period of time. What defenders over that period do we want to hold? There's not many kind of bonus magnets. That's part of the reason why I went for Romero on Saturday, was that I knew that I was wanting to come off the Brighton defenders, and it's not just because of their fixture volume over this period, but the difficulty of fixtures after the international break as well. So if you're getting rid of Van Dijk, does that mean that you're going to hold the Brighton players and then play those individuals after the international break? I really think that a lot comes down to team dependency and thinking about your formation and what, like, almost having a plan for your transfers, and understanding that you could do that on the moves that you've got upcoming as well. So there's, like, to answer that question, there is definitely an argument for keeping hold of Van Dijk. Especially if you're adding to your defenders tonight to add the Arsenal player in, to then perhaps lose the Brighton player or whoever you've got sitting there, for a midfielder move to like Palmer or something next week.
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of stuck. It's probably a lot of people watching are pretty stuck on short-term gains over long-term gains, I suppose. Just for example, I'm looking now, right? And I know if I take out, I've got Gross in my team, for example. I've got Bowen, I've got Tony, I've got Dunk, who are probably all going to go, maybe not so much Bowen over the next couple of weeks, but here I am thinking of taking out Haaland and Van Dijk. So I get the extra fixtures out of Dunk, Gross, and Tony, but I know then I'm going to want to bring Van Dijk and Haaland back 100% a bit later on, and it's that dilemma of, do you just try and almost, if I absorb the hit of only bringing in Saliba and Saka, they'd be kind of offset by the short-term gains by holding on to players like Dunk, Gross, and over the players who haven't got the short-term fixtures. But then my transfer count's going to go down to like 12, 13, and then I know I'm going to want to bring them back. So I think this is, thinking about it, reflecting, there's always a period of the season where maybe I start to think a little bit too short term, and it comes back to bite me next month. So yeah, that's just kind of thinking of what's going on in my head now in terms of who to take out. And I know there's going to be so many. We've got 191 people in the chat, which I think is a record for our Sky stream. There's probably many of these kind of wanting a bit of clarity on this. So yeah, what do you think, James, about the kind of short term versus, I know it's very team specific, but short term versus long term, with just a view on kind of what's to come?
I think on Van Dijk, from just that, I've decided to keep at the moment. And you look at that in front of you tonight, you think Van Dijk to Gabriel is like so obvious. Just get on with it. But I think the point is then the next move. So if I'm saying Gabriel would just be 2 games for me, then what do I sell to next Sunday, Monday? And I look at the defensive options of the 10 teams playing on Sunday, Monday. Villa, you could make a case, but there's not a lot there in terms of tiering, and actually it's complicated with Pau Torres at the moment. Moreno's place under threat. That means Cash's place will be under threat because Consa's back fit. So that doesn't appeal. You're not going back to Brighton. Obviously, the Forest game's fine, but you're not going back. Burnley, you're not going to. You're not going to go back in for Liverpool against City. Same, you're not going for City. Forest, you're not going into away to Brighton. West Ham at home to Burnley, defensive one, like you could punt an Emerson or something, maybe. Tottenham's the only one next Sunday from the defensive, like Paul's already got Romero. So I'd be looking at me from, say, Saliba to maybe Romero this coming Sunday. But if I've added Gabriel because I've sold Van Dijk, then what? Yeah. Do I want to go Van der Ven as well? Or I don't know if Porro's fit, for example, at the moment. And Chelsea Newcastle don't have huge want for defensive assets on the Monday night. It's probably just Palmer for me. So I think in terms of the number of transfers you're making, where you've got that dilemma at the moment, where you can, if you're looking for the gains over this period, go with the offensive ones. Because if you look at them teams that are all playing that blank game week with just the 4 fixtures, who do you actually trust to even keep a clean sheet over that period? And in terms of the tiers of the defensive players, sure, probably the Tottenham players hit passing tiers, the likes of Romero away to Fulham. Otherwise, there's nothing there to be expectant on. So I think if it's like that, where you've got, say, your Haaland dilemma, Fergie, like if you're coming off and you're steaming into Saka for 2 and then moving it on to Bowen on Sunday, that feels like a much better trail, for example. So that's why for me Van Dijk stayed at the moment.
Yeah, looking at it, I've got a dilemma between Van Dijk and Dunk, and I was all set on Van Dijk, but I think I'm going to keep Van Dijk now because that run from Sunday the 31st. It's the next game after Man City, right? And who's to say he doesn't get past? Who's to say he doesn't score against Man City because he's capable of anything, right, Van Dijk? So yeah, Paul, what do you think about that kind of short versus long term? See, it seems to be my Achilles heel is when I get a bit too excited around this period and try and optimize everything and end up with a kind of short on transfers. I know you're much kind of calmer than I am, and you tend to then overtake me towards the end. So what's your take on short versus long strategy?
Oh, yes, I sit on the fence. I don't often sit on the fence, but it's a balance getting them right. Like you made the Bowen move last week as well when you didn't have to, and you got a massive jump off that like straight off the bat. And that's not the kind of move that I would make at all. So I never benefit from instant like success in that way.
Yep.
But I think in the position that you're in, Dunk's got a good fixture against Nottingham Forest first. I just look at who I would get back in after the national break, and Liverpool have got better fixtures, play on the Sunday as well, so you could jump back to it. There's a lot of arguments for or against both Dunk and Van Dijk in your situation. I don't think it's that clear cut.
I think I'm taking out Gross now. I think I'm taking out Gross instead of Dunk. 5-2-8.
No, I sell Gross.
No, I've done Haaland to Saka already. I was trying to decide who to take out, and I think I'm going to take out Gross because I know Gross will likely do pretty well against Forest, but I also think Dunk could do incredibly well against Forest.
Prefer that move. I prefer that move because then you can move Dunk to.
It gives me exactly that. I think that's my move. It gives me 4-4-2s. It gives me a couple of options. If there's like an injury on the weekend to any of them, really, any of the 4, I've got an option on who to take out as well. So sorry for this 5-8 and making my transfers, but I'm glad we managed to talk about all this. Saliba in for Gross, confirmed.
Sure, it's always going to blame us. We didn't tell him to do that, did we?
Callum Wilson.
Callum Wilson.
Is this the point? Have you made the transfer?
Yeah, I've just done it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I might captain Gross on Sunday.
Absolute swine. Who have they got? Forest. Yeah. Do you know? I haven't even looked. Oh my god! I'm not gonna have. Oh, see, I'm not gonna have Haaland or Gross on Sunday now.
I won't.
No, I know.
But because I probably won't see the team. And I wouldn't want to go through that because obviously Villa Tottenham's 1 o'clock kickoff on Sunday, isn't it?
Oh, I've got
plenty of
options.
2 o'clock.
I got Watkins and Bowen. You've got to fancy Watkins, haven't you?
And you've got Dunk.
Look at FF stuff. He loves it. FF stuff loves my pain. He's in the chat laughing. He loves the pain. Have you? I don't know if you ever have, James. Have you ever listened to our Nip and a Half the podcast at all?
I have, right.
Oh, it's just Paul just basically just ribbing me all the way through, and then you just get FF stuff just on the messages. He absolutely loves my pain. Anyway, let's move on from my own personal dilemmas. Apologies for that, guys. Just in terms of then, obviously we've done to death now this, kind of Arsenal and looking ahead to next weekend. Paul, you mentioned looking ahead to potentially Sunday and Monday now, and the only reason we're concentrating so much on this weekend is there's so many transfer opportunities, right? And people like potentially Bowen getting back onto Watkins if anyone's come off him, potentially Palmer and stuff. What's your take on sort of next weekend and who to target?
Yeah, well, coming off the Arsenal players on Saturday opens up. They'll have the more popular players of those playing on the Saturday, but you're absolutely right. Bowen, someone that I'm looking to get in, and I think I'll move. I think I'll make the move from one of the Arsenal players onto Bowen on Sunday. I wouldn't be going back to Brighton. James had already mentioned that there is a hop-on point for Brighton there, but at the same time, then they go on a blank run and then difficult fixtures after the international break. Liverpool City doesn't feel right to jump on them because there's they have blank game week the following week. So it's really Villa, West Ham. You've already mentioned the two of them. Palmer, if you need the captaincy on Monday the 11th, and then there's a potential it's midweek next week if you wanted to go to Bournemouth. But again, they don't play the following week as well. I know they've got a nice run after the international break, so I'm still not 100% set on the Ederson to Neto move either.
It looks like they have, doesn't it, on FF stuff, because that Luton game is a midweek game, but it kind of looks like it's. You can almost. I think you mentioned this, James, about a previous match about a Friday. Oh no, sorry.
No. I'm saying it's like.
Oh, it's like a Friday. That's it. That's what you said about Liverpool, Luton, I think, wasn't it? It kind of looks like it is in there. So in terms of quantity of fixtures, they still do have, those 5 insane fixtures, like home to Sheffield United, home to Luton, home to Everton, home to Palace, 4 home games on the trot, and then away to Luton. It's pretty spanking, isn't it? Are you eyeing up anyone from Bournemouth, Paul? No.
I will give some consideration to getting Neto in, and it might be in an ownership play rather than anything else. But there's certainly, with Senesi potentially out, it's obviously going to make them weaker defensively, and midfield spots are too rotation prone for me and not enough consistency in attacking returns.
Yeah, and the other options, right? Just kind of looking now at my team, I've already got. Well, I will have a midfield 5, and there's already other midfielders I'm going to want as well over over the coming weeks due to the it's going to be really hard to fill 7 spots when we want 9 or 10 players, right? We haven't even mentioned Salah yet, who I'm sure is going to be on the menu, probably on if not Thursday the 4th of April, definitely potentially even Sunday the 31st of March on the Sunday. So
I really hope in the run into the season it's not obvious the hop on off points for midfielders, because that feels where the game won't be template at the end of the season if that's not the case, and just because there's so many options just now.
James, what's your thoughts on next weekend and all the opportunities?
Yeah, I think obviously Sunday is the 3 teams who then play the weekend after: Sevilla, West Ham, Tottenham. So again, as mentioned, I think Romero defensively is on the agenda for myself. I know Paul's obviously already gone there, and then offensive players from those 3 teams as well. Like, I wouldn't rule out. This is the sort of bit where you can be a bit spicy with something if you want, and look at something like Leon Bailey, for example, to go, right, I'm going to go in for Leon Bailey, Tottenham, West Ham, Wolves, move that on to something the next day on Sunday the 31st of March, because Villa go to City the week after. So, but it would be a 3 for 0 over several teams if you want to go down that route now, because you've got Watkins. There's probably not any captaincy, but I think those sort of moves are potentially, you can look at them certainly this Sunday. Chelsea's obvious next Monday. I think Palmer, anyone who hasn't got like me, is obviously going to go back. That feels like enough because they don't play the following weekend. But then because the Burnley game's Saturday the 30th, and you make a case it's probably Palmer versus Son maybe for the captaincy on that day. So you've got to get a Chelsea player in, I think. If you want to go for a Newcastle, you could do, because the only thing with Newcastle to bear in mind beyond Monday night is there's no entry points for them. For as far as we can see, they're always first. So, I mean, to highlight about defenders, Fergie, I was looking earlier at the highest scoring defenders. Fabian Schär is 4th.
Is he really?
And how bad have they been defensively over like the last 3 months?
I think he's got
still 4th.
I think he's got like 3 goals and 2 assists, haven't he, in the last 6 or 7 games? But yeah, you can't really rely on those, can you?
But it's also actually, to be fair, on Romero as well. Yeah. Romero and Schär's attacking returns is part what's boosted them up. Because Romero obviously has missed games with suspension and stuff like that as well, and his passing tiers haven't been absolutely guaranteed recently. So I could potentially look at a Newcastle player Monday night as well, but it's probably not. It's probably Palmer. In terms of Bournemouth next Wednesday, I think the entry point really was yesterday. So I went with 2 yesterday. The obvious one with Solanke. And I went Zabarnyi. I had a little bit of a touch. I would have gone Senesi, It was a case of looking at plans, him being very similar price to Van Heck. He's only 6.6. There's no passing tiers in it or anything. The reason I went there was I sat down properly Saturday and looked at a few plans, and that 0.3 difference was potentially going to be really handy for me, actually. Yeah. And again, the defensive players in terms of the teams, other than really Arsenal this year, has been so unreliable. So let's get an enabler back in there because I need the power of these offensive players over this forthcoming period. So part getting Zabani was enable other things.
Saka's just hit the bar in the second minute.
Here's a play for you. If you had an abundance of transfers, I think if you're looking for a mass differential, has volume of games, has good fixtures, James Maddison on Sunday 10th. I know he's not been playing particularly great from an attacking fantasy aspect, but if you're looking to go someone that's got a proven record in Sky Fantasy, but want really low owned and a sensible move in terms of coming off to gain fixtures, volumes as well, then I think that he could be a really good differential shoot.
Yeah, I like that. Like that, definitely. Spurs just starting to get back into their stride, aren't they? James, what a frustrating month or so. All started with that Chelsea game, wasn't it? When that 4-1 game where we were all camped on the camped on the halfway line. But ever since then, it's been a bit strange as a Spurs fan. But
it would help if we stopped giving teams 1-goal leads. Would be helpful. Might make our life a bit easier.
It would. This game next week against Villa is such a massive game, isn't it? What do you think the score will be of that? Just out of interest.
About 5-4 to Villa.
5-4 sounds about right, doesn't it? That sounds about right.
No, probably 2-1 Villa, 2-2, something like that. Yeah. I will probably captain Watkins Sunday.
Spurs just...
he's going to get chances.
He get so many chances, you're right. Cool. Okay, just looking ahead to transfer count and longer term strategy. So we had the transfers remaining from Sky on Friday. They're still really, really high. Incredible, actually. Top 5,000, 15.8. Top 1,000, 17. Top 100, 16.1. Top 10, 16.1. The top 10 remaining transfer average is higher than the top 5,000 remaining transfer average. That is absolutely insane. I think it just goes to show that anyone outside of the top 100 is going to have a hell of a time, I think, trying to catch the leaders and win the overall thing.
That top 10's littered of the who's who in Sky Fantasy folklore, though.
It's going to be really hard to win from outside the top 100, I think, now in it. But yeah, just a couple of questions, I think. James, obviously you're renowned for your fixture prediction sort of enjoyment, enthusiasm, and accuracy as well. And obviously now we've got the blank. I use FPL Gameweek because it's just easier. But we know we're definitely
Can someone else break the news that Arsenal were winning?
Arsenal, Odegaard goal in the chat. Odegaard goal straight away. Nathan Lodders brought him in. Well done, Nathan. Odegaard transfer paid off 1-0 after 5 minutes. It is going to be, someone put, Nathan put, it's going to be a cricket.
It's going to be a long night for them.
It's incredible.
Honestly.
Incredible. But yeah, just in terms of, the potential double game week 34, which kind of may or may not be massive. Also, a double game week kind of, and it's a Rice assist, David Baxter said. So if anyone's brought in Rice, looks like Rice might be for a bit of a haul as well, because he's definitely going to get passing and stuff, isn't he?
Blow up. Let him have the points. It's all go out.
All right, Havertz is shown on live score as a assist.
Oh, really? Yeah.
They have made mistakes.
Yeah, sorry. Jay has just said no Rice assist. Yeah, just the potential for a double game week 34, which may or may not be big at all. The odd game week potentially, I don't know if it's like a 33, maybe 35, maybe 36, and definitely a pretty significant 37. But one of the things we're all wondering now, I'm wondering now. So I'm down to 16 transfers after my shenanigans this evening. After next week, I'm probably going to be down to about like 12, right? And you think, 12 going into April sounds all right. Looking ahead, I don't think it's going to be all right. And I think that 12 is going to be really, really light. So, yeah, can you just, give us a bit of an overview on what we can expect to happen towards the end of the season?
Put you at ease.
No, I don't think you will put me at ease, mate. That's all.
We've obviously got the fixtures up till it's mid-April now, isn't it? Monday the 15th. That following weekend is the FA Cup semi-finals, which obviously if any team wins in the FA Cup quarter-final, their fixture will be postponed that weekend. However, it doesn't mean it won't happen that week.
Wow,
It may just get moved to the Tuesday,
Into
Wednesday,
midweek.
Thursday directly afterwards,
Oh.
because that midweek is one of the 2 midweeks open for rearranged fixtures. So it might be that there's not huge gains that week. It might be that it looks like there's 4 Monday night footballs. It might look like that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So it's highly likely that there will be a couple of teams over that period play a couple of times. I think the easiest way to think about this logically is any team who probably loses in the FA Cup quarterfinal is the most likely to have 2 fixtures over that period.
Okay.
So that's Leicester isn't going to do anything for you. Coventry isn't going to do anything for you. Manchester United, Newcastle would be the next 2, most likely. And ironically, they're scheduled to play each other on FA Cup semi-final weekends.
Okay.
If either of them win, then that fixture's obviously going to get moved. It could just literally get moved to the Tuesday, possibly, and just be like a normal Monday night game, if you will. So it might not be that there's not that much over that period, but there's certain things that can certainly change the narrative there. I think Brighton's results against Roma in Europe are quite important because I think we could suddenly have Brighton and Chelsea a lot earlier than perhaps we'd imagined. But I also think because Palmer's ownership is going to rocket next Monday night, that won't be a huge problem if it happens. Chelsea-Tottenham, I don't think is going to happen over this period of fixtures we can see. I did make a statement on our FPL chip pod that we did the other week that I think Sky deliberately put Tottenham and Forest on Monday the 8th of April and Chelsea and Everton on Monday the 15th of April to try and make sure Tottenham and Chelsea wasn't arranged earlier, i.e. over those weeks. And Ian said he agreed with that, Mr. Planet Sky. He said, yep, they've done that to probably make sure that the Premier League can't insist it's over that period. So that's going to go later. So that's liable to be extra fixtures for Chelsea, Tottenham in that running. It's definitely conceivable in the end stretch that Chelsea and Tottenham might have 2 games in hand over a number of teams. That's a possibility. That's not right till the end. That midweek at the end is certainly going to have a number of fixtures, probably between 4 and 6 fixtures in that final midweek at the end. But you know what the problem is with that at the end? It's the rotation. If the teams haven't got anything to play for and they're still in Europe, looking at things like Liverpool going to Villa is a perfect example of this. I think in the weekend of match week 37, the penultimate weekend. Now, Villa might be going all out for top 4. Liverpool might be out the title race, and it might look like a straightforward fixture for Villa. Or alternatively, Villa have got top 4 wrapped up. Liverpool going for the title and out of the Europa League, and it looks like a straightforward fixture for Liverpool all of a sudden. Can't predict that sort of thing now.
You know what? You know what as well? There was a really good example right at the end of last season where Newcastle played Leicester, and we'd been kind of
the Monday.
Yeah, on the Monday night. Leicester had been awful for weeks, right? Newcastle had been playing really, really well. And I targeted that one. I kind of went all in. I put in, I think I had Isaac, Wilson, and and whoever else as well. I think it was, I want to say 0-0.
It was, yeah.
Because of
Newcastle about 75%.
Yeah, because at that point in the season, teams have got different objectives, haven't they? And certain teams are they just need to scratch a 0-0 to stay up and things. So what we may consider being a really good fixture now, for example, look at, I don't know, let's just say Luton, right? You assume they're going down, right? But if they need 2 points from the last 2 games to stay up, they're not going to suffer a 5 or 6-0 thrashing today because they're just going to put 10 men behind the ball and just try and play for a 0-0, and all of a sudden things are very, very different, aren't they? So always think that it's amazing how quickly things change in football and how teams' fortunes change. In terms of results, but both attacking wise and defensive wise. I mean, look at
Arsenal recently.
Yeah,
exactly.
Look at Arsenal
recently,
exactly
everyone wanted red of Saka.
You're right,
because they looked at the last 10 games and he had like 2 attacking returns and then just went on a monster run.
I was looking as well this morning. Interestingly, as part of the kind of HabAI stuff, is like why didn't we predict that Watkins was just going to go on this mad run, right? We were looking back at the game weeks and he had a really good start of the season. And then he went through a period, I think it was game week 14 to 21, where I think he might have scored like 1 goal or didn't even score in that period. And all of a sudden he's just gone on a mad one. And it's so, and people would have brought him in ahead of that Barron run and then taken him out at the end of that Barron run and then got stung because he's been scoring ever since. It is one of these things, especially in Sky, where you've got you've got so much opportunity and flexibility to bring in players at the last minute with so much information that that's why I tend to wait till the last minute to kind of make my transfers, because at times things can just change quickly, can't they? But so yeah, sorry, back to the point. Spurs and Chelsea, James, looks like a couple of teams towards the end, which made, so I think
Could be, yeah.
I think it helps us in thinking, if we're thinking of like Parma's, kind of really good example. It's back to the point I was making about kind of thinking about the end game now. For example, if you've got like Son, Romero, and Parma, but you're low on transfers, and you can see an opportunity for a 3-for-1 for someone back over Spurs, you may want to think twice and think, well, actually, I know I'm going to need them at the end, so try and kind of eke the value out, kind of elsewhere.
But
maybe,
then
so.
flip is we could look at that. We might get to say the midweek of 34. And it might be Tottenham's got 7 fixtures left, and some teams have only got 4.
Yeah.
I think it could be that in theory. But then Tottenham's fixtures from there could be City at home, Arsenal at home, Liverpool away, Chelsea away. Like how yeah, you got the fixtures in hand. Who's going heavy for that? Like you're not.
Arsenal. It's 2-0
You're
Arsenal.
not.
Arsenal have scored again.
There's a shock.
Own goal, Saka assist, according to J McD in the chat. Thank you very much, J McD. If that is
oh no, my Sheffield United captain's going to get minus points now.
Yeah, indeed. Paul,
I think Brighton, Chelsea. By the way, Brighton, if they lose to Roma in Europe, will change that narrative potentially of Chelsea, Tottenham having additionals at the end.
Okay, cool.
Because I think Chelsea or Tottenham, Man City will then go into that midweek of 34. The other one will go into 37, and Brighton and Chelsea is then more likely to be the odd fixture out, if you will. They're going to try and leave that Chelsea-Tottenham as late as possible. This is why they've done it, is because Sky have got Chelsea versus Tottenham. They want it in one of their midweeks. They're not bothered about Brighton-Chelsea. So if Brighton-Chelsea can then go on one of European nights, if Brighton are out, that's what will end up happening, I think.
Okay. I think I'm holding on to Van Heck anyway. I think just out, just the fact he's cheap, just the thing he's almost nailed for bonus every single week, regardless of kind of who they play, and the fact, as you say, that they may have this, defenders are hard to come by, and the fact that they may have these extra fixtures at the end, I think it's a key for me. Paul, just thinking about the kind of end game, I think we mentioned last week, I think, that kind of when we get down to maybe, 12 or 13 sort of transfers, every transfer we make, it's 3-0. It's 3-0 already.
Bloody hell.
3-0 after 15 minutes. Don't know who scored it. Yeah, thanks for the quick update in the chat. It's really, really appreciated. Martinelli, 3-0. Unbelievable.
Would they get 10, do you think?
Well, they said it could be in the chat. J McD said it could. This could be 10. Unbelievable. So I was saying about if you had all these transfers, you went in on all of them. You come away with these 2 games with.
This is why I agreed to this as well, because I was like, there's no way I want to watch this.
I know. Painful. 3-0 after 15 minutes. What does that aggregate?
You want to watch the football? No, I don't actually.
What does that aggregate to over 90 minutes? That aggregates to. I think it's 18-0. 18-0, superb. Yeah, Paul, just in terms of, I was thinking maybe 12 or 13 transfers left, which I think that's where I'm going to be, essentially, kind of after next weekend. And then you have to think about every transfer you make is towards the end game as well. This is why now, in hindsight, after speaking with you guys, actually, I kept Van Dijk, because I know I'm going to want him back. In terms of transfers over the next week or two, when are you starting to think about kind of end game? Are you starting to think about it now, or is it a few more weeks?
Probably 10 transfers to go, I think.
10.
Start probably thinking that that's a player that I'm going to want to keep in long term. I take on board your point about the enablers. I think that's a sensible ploy as well, knowing that you might just want to keep that, particularly this season when defenders haven't been the highest scoring position, lack of clean sheets, and therefore the Van Heck, like holding Van Heck, even if you don't need the budget in the next 2 or 3 weeks, beyond that, when we think of a position that we could be in where you want Saka, Salah, Son, like Foden in midfield, Haaland
Even Watkins is quite expensive, right? 9.3.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I think this is part of the reason why I'm going for Neto. I'll probably move him on again, but the way the fixtures fall is by the time I want to get rid of Neto, I'll probably have Haaland and Salah and whoever else kind of in and stuck back in my team. So I kind of know then who I can afford to sort of go to until the end of the season. I do like the Neto move the next 5 games through to sort of start to middle of April. But then after that, I'll know exactly how much money I've got, and I will be picking a keeper until the end of the season. So I think if I got Neto, Palmer, and Van Heck, I think that should be, should be able to. I haven't looked, but I think I should be able to afford reasonably whoever I want, especially since you still got like Duncan Romero, we know are kind of underpriced as well, and they're going to be two we'll probably be looking at a bit later on. So, But James, when do you start thinking about sort of end game at all, or are you? Because I know historically you like to kind of just attack, don't you, and try and win. I think you admitted last week's pod that the winning is potentially out of sight for you now. But are you still gonna just attack, or are you gonna consolidate at any point?
I think if you break down the 3 periods with the additional slash, let's call them blanks, doubles, if you will, you've got the now, you've got the FA Cup semi-final period, and you've got the match week 37 at the end. Biggest gain is now. Think of it like this. Let's say City were playing the following weekend, or exactly what we'd said earlier, if the Arsenal-Chelsea game had gone ahead, that would have been going to 5 or 6 Arsenal tonight if the Arsenal-Chelsea game had gone ahead. It's only that a lot of what we'd go to next week, we've already said, Palmer, Cole, don't want a lot else, Villa, West Ham, Tottenham attackers, maybe a Romero, for example. It's that's stopping this being an absolute steam in. If it was City, we'd be going mental for this.
Yeah, I agree.
We get as many as you can. Same if it was Arsenal, same if it was Liverpool. It's because it's some slightly less teams. It's a little bit off-putting, but I think the biggest gains of all from the fixture perspective is now. So go for it. Exactly as Paul said, Maddison. I mentioned Leon Bailey. These sort of moves that perhaps just normally in the seasons, perhaps off the table. Go for it now. I think. Go for a player like that on Sunday.
Glad you said that, because I think that's my sort of way of playing, and the way I've set my team up. Set my team up for the next, to maximize the next couple of weeks where we just got this congestion of good fixtures for good teams, or good players anyway. Like I say, Son, Bowen, these sorts of players. So
I think to go back on Paul's point as well. At the moment, we've got 4 teams in the Europa. So Paul, I know you were saying earlier about you hope it kind of doesn't lay out where the going in is obvious. Well, while Liverpool stay in that Europa, they're constantly Sundays and stuff, aren't you? Yeah. It's going to keep happening. So I think things like that, at the end of the season, you gains as you sort of wanting like a Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, which is shit for the players. But it's like, right, I can go in. They've got a 3-for-1 or a 3-for-0 now. Chain that on. I don't think there'll be so much of that towards the end of the season. Actually, I think the biggest problem at the end will be what we saw at the end of last season: is teams with nothing to play for, just throwing stuff up in the air. I think that's probably going to be the bigger problem at the end. And right now, we can't see that, right? If any of Arsenal, Liverpool, City just suddenly lost 3 games in a row, right?
Yeah,
their league season is over effectively. Right now, obviously, we'll think they'll keep winning, but I'm sure when we get to the end, that match week 37, one of them will probably be out the race at least, if it's not done. And if it's done, and we've got Heavy, and we've got Van Dijk, Salah, Rodri, Foden, Haaland, Saka, Saliba, that's quite conceivable. And then you get to the end and they've all got nothing to play for and they're all still in Europe. Yikes.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest problem. It's not the actual fixtures. It's what are these teams doing at the end, I think.
Really good point. A few updates from the chat. Thank you, guys. It was a Kiwior assist for Martinelli. According to the chat, though, DT says it might have hit right, but it looks like it's 3-0 Martinelli. Kiwior assist. Ben Osborne's been subbed off after 15 minutes, Tim.
So me and Fergie had a brief chat before we started, and I said to you, I think that's a back 4.
Yeah, so they've changed
based on the Sheffield United lineup. Yeah, he's Osborne's probably. I'm not watching it, but I'm going to guess he's probably gone on at left back basically.
Subbed off. Fans leaving already, apparently after 15 minutes. Ian Parry.
Some good bars in Sheffield. I don't blame
them. Ian Parry says Neto, Palmer, and Van Heck gets you all the heavy hitters. It's good to know. So yes, the kind of plan there. Thanks for those. Thanks for those in the chat. If anyone has got any last sort of strategic questions at all, please feel free to leave it in the chat. Paul, what's your kind of high level strategy now from what you know now until the end of the season? We're always asked, aren't we, how many transfers are we going to have left? What do you think is a sensible amount of transfers to have left from after the international break until the end of the season?
What's a comfortable amount? I would say is probably 17, 18 plus.
Jeez, okay. Bollocks.
I'll be on less than that. He did say comfortable.
I nearly spat my squash out then. I thought you were going to say like 10. 17.
No, I think amongst engaged managers, maybe 15, 16 is the average at that point. Okay. And
above, the thing is as well, next weekend, the actual blank weekend, it's probably nothing to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
so it's just this coming week.
Yeah. I think maybe 1.5 on average would get used tonight amongst engaged managers. I say there was a lot of people that didn't have.
I think it might be more.
You think so?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will have steamed into that.
It's hard. It's hard not to, isn't it? That's the thing. It's so, especially you, Paul. You're very reserved, and Paul's got this thing, James. At times when he doesn't want to make transfers, he goes out for a walk and doesn't take his phone, so he's got no opportunity. But there are people who tempted, like myself.
He's smart, isn't he? You know what else he's got?
Go on.
More money in the bank than me as well.
And he's good looking as well. Swine of
and he's good looking.
Looking at my rank just now. This is why I think that it's maybe not as like managers haven't loaded into him as much. As I started off the night at 874th. I think Saka will be. But you both agreed. You both captain Saka, right?
Yeah.
Tonight. Yeah. I captained Saka and I own Saliba, and I've went up 3 places. I expected to go down as well. So
I've only dropped 4. I've gone from 244 to 248. I'm surprised.
With the same 2.
No, you're right. Yeah. It must be. Can't be that bad then.
I've got the clean sheet
and
points.
And their ownership already, as say at the start of the game, was top 1K ownership. Saka was at 50% and Saliba was at 75%. So they already had. It's 4-0.
It's 4-0. I've just seen that. Sean in the chat just said 4-0.
I've just dropped to 500.
Yeah. There will be.
Gabriel scored. It's going to be in it.
Havertz, it is. Havertz goal. Sam D. Taylor. Thank you, Sam. There's.
So and then a couple, and I'd imagine next week I think will be very popular. I think 2 to 3 transfers get used there then as well. I think 15 to 16 would be the average going into that international break. And you can make the argument of how you're going to use them, and potentially that's right. But if you're coming up against another engaged manager, say you're battling out in a mini league or multiple mini leagues with another engaged manager who's on similar points to you, you're obviously going to want more transfers than less than that individual in that situation. So
according to you go, James. Sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say, for me, I'll be using probably, it would either be 4 or 5, I think, across Sunday and Monday. That will put me on either 14 or 15 left. But then I envisage that's what it will be on Sunday the 31st of March as well.
Yeah. I think I'll be down to, I might be to 12, I don't know yet. Martinelli assist for a Havertz goal. According to Steve Cheek, he says he's only got Saka, and he's only dropped 4 places, 111 to 115th. Only Saka. That is great. Obviously, there will be passing bonus to be added on, clean sheets to be added on, assuming they keep a clean sheet.
People might have captained Saliba as well.
But maybe it's not. Maybe it's not as bad as we thought. Colin Johnson says he's excited for the end of pod question. Finally then, our final question again. Sorry, it's to do with transfers, but obviously it's such a such an important part. And I think it's an old Ian Parrin question, but FPL Spartans has asked it. Come to you first, James, if that's all right. Just in terms of transfer count, the old workable, handy, or golden amount of transfers. So I think Paul, you mentioned comfortable. That probably becomes in between handy and golden. But yeah, workable, handy, or golden after the break, James. What's your range?
I think of sort of what we're saying. The Such has just messaged me. He said this game is bullying.
Bullying, brilliant.
Literally the thing. As I said, I'm going to be down to about 14, 15, and I think that'll be kind of engaged average roughly. I was a bit heavier earlier on, calmed down a bit. I think that's roughly where it'll probably be at across the board. There'll be people going down to sort of single digits, but I think there'll definitely be engaged managers with a bit more than that as well. So. Look, 15 for the final 9 match weeks. When you break that, it's what 1.6 or 1.7 per week.
Yeah,
it's reasonable. It's still a lot, yeah. And there'll be a few weeks there, like I said, where it's going to land where Liverpool are Sunday, etc., and you won't be doing anything. So I think that's perfectly reasonable for the running person.
And what's the least amount you would say, just in terms of to have a chance?
I wouldn't want to be in single digits.
Okay. So 10.
But it also depends how well you're set, right? Yeah, so, for example, most of us who don't own Salah, which I guess would be the majority of us at the moment, know that first week after the international break, we're buying him on the Sunday or the Thursday if he's fit, right?
Yep.
Now, for whatever reason you're carrying him through, it's one less, isn't it? For perhaps me sitting there with Van Dijk, he might be one less than someone else goes, well, I want to get 2 Liverpool at least over that period. They're the 2 most reliables. So I think it also depends what you're carrying through. And the same as we said, if you went heavy Arsenal and you're then moving out on Sunday, the same applies. If you do go heavy on Villa, Tottenham, West Ham, for example, same. When off. If it's someone like Watkins, maybe that's a hold all the way through. If it's a Romero, maybe it's a hold all the way through. If it's a Bailey or a Maddison, the chances are that's a move on to something else at some point.
Yep. Good stuff. Paul, what's your range in terms of workable through to golden?
Yeah, I err on the side of cautious. I still think that workable 11, 12. What are you laughing at?
Because I know you just know how many I've got. You just do it. You just work around it to wind me up. What he does, James, right? What he does, he knows how many points I score in a certain format. Say I've scored 50 points, he'll go, "Oh, Fergie, I've had the week from hell. I've only scored 60 points," knowing damn well I've only scored 50. He always does it every single week. Anyway, mate, go on.
It's all about the mind. It's all about the mind games.
It is. You kill me.
Yeah. So in 16, 17, I think, in fact, maybe that is too many. Like 15-ish would be really good at that break. Yeah. 12, 13, 14 is around the middle, and then 11 or 12, I would say, is workable.
Okay. Yeah, I think
I'd rather have your ranking transfer count than my ranking transfer count.
Oh, okay. I'd rather have your hair than mine, so we'll call it even. I think workable. Again, I agree with James's point. It's kind of how you're set, right? If you still need to make 5 transfers to get to a team you want, then 11 or 12 is probably not enough, though. So I'd like to think with my team, for example, that reasonably well set. So I think workable is probably like maybe 11 or 12. Agree. I think handy is probably about. I think handy is where you can still afford to make an odd luxury move, to take a gamble somewhere. So I think sort of 16, 17, but I know there will be managers in this chat and everywhere else who are going to still have, be in like rank 200, 200, 300, still going to have sort of 20 odd transfers left, and I think they're going to be able to really make the big moves. So when we go for Son for the 4-for-1. They can go Romero, Son, Maddison, just example, and keep doing that towards the end of the season and really make the game. So, but yeah, James, where do you think you're gonna finish? Where would you be happy?
I wish I had Paul's looks. I would target top 100 for me. I mean, my best finish is 30th. So I mean, the target's first, right? Once first is gone, the rest is almost irrelevant in this format, unfortunately. But yeah, I'll be trying to push for that to beat 30th. I think that's very, very unlikely. I think top 100 for me is probably going to be difficult from here, but also achievable. So somewhere in there, I'd hope.
Nice.
I'd be disappointed if I'm 2-4-8 after that fourth Arsenal goal. Yeah, that fourth goal didn't even move me at all. 2-4-8. I guess if I finish lower than this, I'd be disappointed. Let's say that.
Fair. Yourself, Paul?
I think that if I got top 500 now, I think could probably be a good finish from here.
Really?
Where are you, Paul?
Yeah. 876th now.
If you had 30 transfers left,
I've got 20 left. So
if you had 30 left, do you think you could still go all the way?
no. There's
Due to the congestion of managers at the top, they've
yeah. Well, one, the level of the managers in the top 10 who I recognise almost all of their names. I know that they're very, very good players and won't make, whilst you need an element of luck, won't make silly mistakes up there, or not many anyway. So there's bits to jump into, and I think getting into the top 10 when you're in the top 100 is incredibly difficult. Getting into the top hundreds, difficult. And then I'm at the treacle bit just now, like I feel like I'm jumping up and down constantly, similar to what you'd said. Can't remember if it was off air or on air when you mentioned there about jumping up and down positions. So I thought that I had made a massive gain on people by getting Romero and 14 points in on Saturday, and I went down in rank over the weekend, and I had a fairly decent side set up. So it is really difficult, and it's all about transfer position just now. But yeah, I think if I had 30 just now, I'd be more confident of getting top 250 position, but even then I think it'd be hard for me to break into top 100 with 30 transfers in my position.
Yep, that's fair. I was 274th. I'm now 281. Again, really surprised that only lost six or seven places. Really surprised at that. I think I've got a bit of an advantage in the short term. As I say, that's been my strategy, is to try and pack out my team with short term players, apart from Van Dijk actually, but I'd hope that would give me a bit of a rise over the next week or two. But then it's just after that, it's kind of clinging on by the fingernails to the edge time, just to hang on to the coattails, just to try and keep. I really want to finish in the top 200. I know FF stuff is measuring managers, isn't he, by consecutive top 200 finishes. So I really want to go that. But I see James. I'm hoping. Well, I don't know your transfer account. Hoping you and I can have a bit of a ding dong kind of. We're similarly placed, different-ish teams as well. I think so. It'll be good to see kind of where we can end up. So
we can have a ding dong, mate. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, the most important part of the podcast is the final question called "What's your favorite?" And this time, it is what are your favorite 5 items from a full English or Scottish breakfast, Paul? You can only pick 5 though. If you're on your deathbed and they said you can have a breakfast with only 5 things on, and you can't say like 5 sausages. They've got to be different things. So I know what's not on Paul's one. He's got a particular phobia of something. But James, I come to you first. What would your top 5 be?
No, I don't have a phobia of food at all. Look at me.
Same mate. Same.
Sausage, bacon, hash brown, beans, egg.
Okay, interesting. And nothing to kind of mop up though. I think there's no. I don't know if you've thought.
Yeah, coffee, mate.
So I mop up the beans and egg juice. I'm thinking I can't. I struggle to leave that. I don't know. You don't get. Don't get the rest of toast, mate.
What's the rest of the food for, mate? We're throwing ketchup in that as well, pal.
Yeah, pretty standard there, James. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on most of those. I think. Paul, you?
I'll go no carbs. Egg, sausage, bacon, haggis, black pudding.
Haggis and black pudding. Wow.
I was right tempted to say haggis just for the crack.
You know what? When I was in Edinburgh, James, I had tasted haggis for the first time, and I don't know if you ever have. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely stunning. I was really surprised. It's almost like a peppery black pudding is how I would best describe it. I was really.
What about picture of the chicken Kiev that I sent you, Fergi?
Yeah, that looks awesome. That looks
incredible.
It was nice, is it?
Instead of garlic butter in it, it was haggis and peppercorn sauce.
Sounds good.
Butcher does it.
Yeah. Highly recommend, James. Honestly, especially if you like black pudding, you will love haggis. It is really, really tasty.
Nah.
But Paul, are you, Paul, are you willing? Have we shared your phobia before?
I don't know, maybe.
Are you willing to share or not?
The devil's food.
The devil's food. Paul's got a phobia, James. I mean, an actual phobia now, not just kind of.
I can see that he's hesitating, but we all want to know what it is now.
Am I allowed?
You've already mentioned it.
I thought I had. Yeah, it's on your plate. It's on your plate, James, and it's not what you think. Yeah, it's not what you think.
Am I allowed to guess?
Yeah.
Well, better. Well, you just said 5 items, and we said three or four of the same.
We said
3 or 4 of the same.
Is it the beans?
Yeah.
It is the beans.
That sauce. It's like the smell, the consistency of it, the look. Like, oh my.
He said it's kind of well known amongst his friends, and we might be going away kind of next year with Paul and his mates, and they've been talking about like a baked bean bath, and Paul said if they did that, he would literally just leave and go home and never speak to anyone again. He's absolutely deadly serious as well. So yeah.
What about like spaghetti hoops and stuff, Paul? Is that like the same thing or?
Well, it's not. I don't particularly like them, but it's definitely not the same thing. Like, I'm not having it. People say it's just tomato sauce. No.
In the chat, Scottish square sausage has to be up there for Paul. John Aconley, German white sausages with marmalade. We do get some random stuff on these questions, but Dave Hannock says bacon, black pudding, egg, hog's pudding. Never even heard of that. Do you know what hog's pudding is? Anyone? Never heard of that. I think mine sausage, beans, hash browns. I'm gonna put in toast in mine. I'm not sure whether James you assumed a side of toast, but I got to have toast. You got to have toast to mop up the beans. I hate leaving.
I would drop the egg actually if that was the choice. Then if you got to have toast, it's the egg I'd lose first.
It's 5-0. Yeah, I think I'd lose the egg out of them. Rice has just scored. Rice on for an absolute haul. Saka assist according to Paul. Rice goal, Saka assist. Rice is on for an absolute. Well, he got a goal and assist already. He's gonna get passing as well, you guess. Rice goal, Saka. 5-0. It's not even half time. Unbelievable. And Sheffield United haven't got anywhere near their goal in 40 minutes. Dave says hog's pudding is a Cornish white pudding with pepper. Mace? That sounds really.
Mace.
I think it says Mace. MACE. Unless it's some posh thing called Massey down in Cornwall. I don't know. Bubbling squeaky in parent says as well. Interesting. Anyway, coffee or tea, James?
Coffee.
Same.
Can't function without one in the morning, mate.
Same. Do you know? I think I've got a slight obsession now. I even obviously when I wake up in the morning, I know a lot of people have this. They just have to. As soon as I wake up, my eyes open, I'm like coffee. But sometimes, even before I go to sleep at night, I'm looking forward to going to sleep so I can wake up and have a coffee. That's how kind of obsessed I am with coffee. And Paul, you like a flat white as well, don't you?
Take him out for God's sakes.
How sad is that? When we go out for a drink, come back. I can't wait to wake up, Paul. I just want a coffee. I can't wait.
You go to bed thinking about your coffee the next morning. It's one of the saddest things I've ever heard, mate.
I've got much going on, mate, sadly. Okay. And that is it from us for this week. Hopefully the breakfast chat made up with the Sky chat. But no, seriously, thank you so much, James. You've been an absolute diamond. We'll definitely
thank you for having us, mate.
We'll definitely have to have you on again, potentially towards the end of the season, maybe, if you'd like to come on. But thank you so much. Where can people find you? Assuming kind of most listening kind of know where you are anyway. But yeah, do you want to give any plugs?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just plug the Sky Pods. You can follow me at Planet FPL Pod. It's primarily FPL, but we do a Sky Pod every Wednesday, although this week it is on Thursday this week.
Okay, and James's chip strategy planning pod last week, always quite a famous pod, absolutely superb. It's well worth a listen as well, even if you don't play FPL.
And your Clash of the Correspondents pods are ingenious about like the idea around that for me. I've like my favorite podcasts to listen to.
Cheers, pal. Well, we've got Bournemouth Luton be on Wednesday. That'll be Wednesday this week. Instead, we're having to push the Sky Pod back to Thursday. So Bournemouth Luton's our one this week. We've got West Ham Villa next week ahead of the single game day for that one as well. So it is focused more towards FPL, but there's definitely tidbits you'll pick up there because you're picking up the first-hand word from the fans, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. Yep, lovely stuff. And thanks again, James. Thank you, Paul. Where can people get hold of you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty 1 MCANULTY.
Again, some weird shit in the chat around the breakfast. Dave Hannigan, fried slice covered in sugar.
Fried slice, but with sugar.
Yeah, sugar. But fried slice is superb. And Humble Monk suggests alphabeti spaghetti for you, Paul, maybe as an alternative. My handle on Twitter is @FAgentscoreFergi. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. Please do it. Really, really helps us. And remember to subscribe to there. And remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And if you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast versions and leave us some comments. Paul and I will be back next week to preview Sky Game Week 32. In the meantime, let's hope. So the Premier League record is 9-0. James, yes or no? Do you think that goes this evening?
To be honest, it's if they can be bothered, isn't it?
I think so.
I suspect probably not.
Probably not. It never seems to, does it? They'll probably ease off, sub off players, maybe.
It's that easy that they'll probably take pity a little bit.
Paul, does it go?
Nah, 7-0.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. In the meantime, enjoy the match tonight. Have a great game week 31, and goodbye for now.